Okay, well done Tom, thanks for that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, bride and groom, it's my honour to be here giving you this speech today. I'm one of Tom's closest friends, and before I entertain you with a few stories that's going to make Tom feel uncomfortable for a few minutes, I think we've got to thank a few people. I know they've already been done, but firstly, to both sets of parents. Your contributions have helped make this an absolutely fantastic day for the couple, and also for the rest of the friends and family too. It's amazing how far people will come for some free food. Secondly, to our lovely bridesmaids, it's free to us, mate.
That's what that
to our lovely bridesmaids, you've done an excellent job in supporting Stephanie today, and all of you look absolutely delightful. And thirdly, to Steph, you look absolutely stunning, whereas Tom just looks stunned. And again, Tom would like me to thank you for turning up today. And lastly, thanks to all of you. It's been a memorable day, and it wouldn't have been possible without all of you being here. Tom and Steph would also like to thank you for their wedding gifts. I did ask Tom if I could come along and choose some of the gifts with him. He said he didn't want to give me the gun, as the beer brewing kit, lazy boy chair, wouldn't have made the cut. During the service today, I couldn't help thinking how funny it was how history repeats itself. It was 24 years ago that Mavis and Pete were sending their daughter to bed with a dummy, and I thought, it's happening all over again today. It was also during the service, I wasn't really paying attention really, so, if you were paying attention, you would have seen Tom place his hand on top of Stephanie's, and that was when our good Reverend Stephen said, "Those whom God has joined together, let no man put asunder." You probably weren't aware of this fact, mate, but that's the last time you got the upper hand, I'm afraid.
No, the last time was 5.5 years ago.
So, Tom, or Thomas Michael Stanley Overton, son of David and Marilyn, born on the 23rd of July 1983, at a weight of £6, 12 ounces. And I'm sure he's not that much over that weight today.
Right, it's not easy.
I've known Tom for over about, well, just 13 years now. We first met playing squash at Club Kingswood, and since then we've spent hundreds of hours trying to get the upper hand over each other at a game of squash. Even off court, we still couldn't stop the rivalry. I'm sure as many of you will be aware, Tom is a huge Manchester United fan. And yes, exactly, boo. And myself being an Arsenal supporter, it doesn't always sit well when our two teams meet. Especially since my second favourite team is now Barcelona. And I dread to think what would have happened if we'd both got through to the cup final today, because I'm sure a couple of us, me and Tom, would have been late for the service. But despite this flaw, we've still managed to stay friends. We've shared a lot together throughout the years, and I hope that will continue. Today, I have the honour of sharing the top table with him and standing as his best man, so I thank you for that, mate. I'm also pleased to see that after 13 years of friendly rivalry, he's finally realised who the best man really is.
Yes, James.
Right. So, I'll now go on to a subject where I have to choose my words carefully. And I'm sure that it's one that Tom would like me to brush over altogether with I've got no recollection of that, stripping. You see, there was a period in Tom's life where he lived a little close to the wind. No one would think it, well, just by looking at him, but he likes to flaunt it whenever he can. And on a weekly basis, he'd throw himself at not just one, but several women. He was never happier unless he was stripping his clothes off and gyrating on women's laps for money. And I do have some photos of this in my possession, which I have got around, and I'll pass them around if anyone wants to have a look at them later. They are definitely worth a look, especially if you haven't seen Tom in a donkey thong. A best man's speech wouldn't be complete without showing you or telling you how he can get himself into a complete and utter state after 1 pint of lager shandy. It was Tom's 21st birthday. Naturally, there was copious amounts of alcohol involved, and after a good few beers, he was quite a lot worse for wear. He asked me for a glass of water, so being the good friend that I am, I went to the bar and ordered a glass of Smirnoff Ice. I gave it to him and told him it was just cloudy water, and without even a second thought, he necked the lot. And I'm pretty sure that was the one that completely finished him off, because shortly afterwards he collapsed headfirst into a girl's lap. And that girl's lap is where he stayed like a good little puppy ever since. Because it happened to be our Stephanie here. Now, in all seriousness, I think that was probably the beginning of their relationship and start of a budding romance. And I remember in the state of that night. So, Steph, what were you thinking?
Especially when you put him in the shopping trolley.
Well, that's to come, that's to come.
You've ruined it now.
Yeah. I'll tell everyone. Shortly after that, we decided it was time to take Tom home. Being poor students, we weren't able to afford a taxi. So we did the next best thing. We took one of the Queen's finest pounds and we put it in a Summerfield shopping trolley. Toppled Tom into it and then spent about 15 to 20 minutes behind Bar Plasma in Whitford, bashing him into walls and whatever else we could find. Eventually, we became bored with humiliating him and decided it was time to roll him on home. Those of you that drive up London Road will know of an invention by Maurice Gatsonides. I don't know if anyone knows what he invented? The speed camera, yeah, the jolly speed camera. With two drunken lads pushing either drunken Tom in a trolley past the speed camera, there was but one conclusion. We could set that speed camera off. After 3 or 4 attempts, we were close, but we weren't quite there. And on the 5th attempt, we were greeted with 2 flashes, so we cheered with joy. Unfortunately, the flashes continued and seemed to be of a bluey colour. And then we were greeted with, "Good evening, lads." "Good evening, officers," was our core reply. And, well, Tom didn't even manage a reply. He kind of just rolled his head towards them and the cone fell off his head. Shortly after that, we managed to get him home and I left him curled up around the toilet bowl. And that was his 21st birthday, which was quite memorable. I think there's actually the term trolleyed now applies to Thomas, if you look that in the dictionary. A few years ago, we went skiing. And I remember when we first arrived, Tom went to unpack his case, and unbeknown to him, Steph had slipped a little photograph of herself so he could put it on the bedside cabinet. Just so, you know, in case he wouldn't forget that. But I don't think there was ever going to be a risk of Tom forgetting our Steph and the missus back home, because every night at an ungodly hour, he would be on the phone, nattering away under his covers, trying to make up for whatever he'd done wrong.
I've never figured it out.
But I'm sure after 2 hours of being on the phone, he hadn't a clue and it just made the situation even worse. Eventually, after a couple of nights of this, Tom is a bit of an insomniac anyway. He doesn't tend to sleep. Marilyn will confirm that. He never slept through his childhood. I told him he had to hang up or bugger off somewhere else. He made movements to go out onto the landing, but I said, "You can't go out there, mate, because you're going to wake up all the rest of the family." So I threw him out on the balcony and went back to bed. And I was snoozing, and I think it was actually the absence of his voice that woke me up in the end. But I went out onto the balcony where I'd thrown him, and there he was, standing outside on the balcony, knee-deep in snow, in his boxers, shivering away, on the phone to Steph. And I think that's when I realised that this one was quite serious. Apparently I'm supposed to give some sort of advice to the bride and groom, and I've got a couple of golden nuggets that I'd like to pass on to Tom and Steph. In the spirit of equality, I've got a gem for you both. I'm very thankful like that. And firstly, the first one is for Steph, and I ran this one by Tom, and he thinks that it's going to be the key to a happy, long-lasting union between the two of you. And this is Tom's one and only rule. That is, you are entitled to food, clothing, shelter, and medical attention. Anything else you receive is a privilege, and you will earn those privileges by conducting yourself properly. That's actually part of the regulations for the inmates staying at the US Penitentiary of Alcatraz, which hopefully they'll get to visit next week. Tom, Steph did actually give me a rule for you. In fact, there's 2 of them, and I think that out of the 2 sets of rules, this is the one you're more likely going to have to abide by. Rule number 1. Stephanie is always right. Yeah. Rule number 2, if Stephanie is wrong, refer to rule number 1. And on that note, I think it's time if I ask you all to stand and raise your glasses. I give you Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Overton.
Easy, you're in trouble.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. James.
Hi there, for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm James.